This is a letter from Jack Hartsfield. He no longer lives there, but I'm going to read it because he sent me quite a few letters for the purpose of putting it up. Should I need credibility here? Really an odd position I've been put in. Anyway, as far as I know, Jack's deceased. He worked for the Huntsville Times, and therein I'm going to read this, so I'm just going to get to it. He died a couple of years ago, and he saved my life back in 1980, and probably more than that. But he was undercover for the FBI, and he covered Los Alamos and a whole bunch of stuff. He knew so much. But he worked as a reporter. That's how he drew his check. Anyway, this was March the 24th, 2006. I'm just going to read it. By the way, I believe it's his nephew, is Hank Hartsfield, the astronaut, commander of two of the shuttles. And so that, I'm just throwing that in to show you. Dear Peggy, I received your postcard March the 23rd, and strangely, I had been thinking about you a few days earlier and hoping you were doing well somewhere, somehow. Hoping you were doing well somewhere and somehow. Okay, I hope I didn't pick up the wrong letter. This frustration, however, is that we may never really know why that would be cruel to all of us. So even now, we'll see what comes next. It's been a long haul, is what was right above it for a lot of us, hasn't it? Longer than any of us probably would have ever suspected, thinking back to the 80s and earlier. Okay, he says, I do remember my way to some of our first meetings, way back to some of our first meetings at the Haystack. Well, it wasn't, it was Warren House, there in Huntsville. That was when I was almost killed. April Fool Day of 80 and brought across the state line to Huntsville and worked for the district attorney, Fred Simpson. It seemed I was somehow primed for those early encounters, considering I was being psychologically spoon-fed on circumstances, situations backing up not just to protection, rackets, and corruption, politically and otherwise. The cancer was growing in Huntsville. Much of the big picture went back far earlier than Sheriff Dave Hedrick or Bulldog Daniel, all the way back, would you believe, to before and during World War II. So I was leaning forward and historically backward at the same time. Now we're 26 years later, much of what I have experienced is with me still every day, some part of every day, and I'm still learning. It has been an incredible journey, one perhaps that I wouldn't wish on someone else, although there never was much doubt in my own mind, and I was traveling the road I was meant to travel. I distinctly recall your efforts for trying to fathom numerology and its links and connections you were perceiving the 22, and at first I did not understand, but that too would change. What happened to you seemingly was also happening to me, not precisely the same way, but close enough. As you progressed on your own path and I tried traveling my own, you were definitely subjected to pressures you may not have understood. I didn't understand for a long time. Well, okay, I get that. You were indeed trying to pull back the curtains of some very nasty clandestine, bizarre and dangerous happenings in Huntsville's underworld. It wasn't pretty. So to discredit you and me later, logic of some sinister people was to go to any length to destabilize your life. Perhaps if you chose or didn't believe it, but the U.S. attorney in St. Louis back when they told me bluntly that at the time, Huntsville and the Tennessee Valley were central distribution points for Colombian cocaine for every state east of the Mississippi. And the mob was involved. New Orleans, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami. Huntsville banks were laundering money. Get it? As you may recall, I was fired from my job at the Huntsville Times for being interested in some things in which I did not have should not have been interested. Divorce, lost my home, my reputation, credibility, brought into question, and ultimately forced to leave Alabama to try to make a living elsewhere. So, and you and I both paid our dues. Later he was brought back, and they gave him an excellent recommendation. But he's deceased now the last couple of years. Jack was a couple of years older than me, 3, I believe. You may or may not know, but during the period when our paths crossed, Huntsville was considered the third most sensitive area in the nation where national security was concerned. After all, it was the guts of the U.S. space program, the home of anti-ballistic missile research projects, located every Army tactical missile system field anywhere in the free world, where security leaks of sensitive data were occurring far too often, where the Army's Missile and Munitions Center and School operated, where 119 former, I'm not going to read that and where J. Edgar Hoover's FBI Division 5, a super-secret police agency, had operated since the early 1940s. In fact, it was so sensitive that it did not exist, with links to Daytona, Ohio, Washington, D.C., and etc. So I'm going to skip here because I'm just going on and on. He's talking about targets and U.S. program with it. He's talking about psychotronics, targets in psychotronics, still another program tied to research efforts called psychotronics in the U.S., formerly called psychotectronics by the later defunct Soviet Union, was pursued using electronic frequencies, low-level frequencies, in some cases in what is called brainwave entrapment. Only a percentage of the area's population would be I'm going to skip that because a gentleman named Nikola Tesla was researching psychotronics as far back as the 1930s. The Soviet Union has one time wound up with most of the research after his death, as I recall. I have to say this, if Jack says that, I believe it. It's been told, and it's on YouTube, back when I started doing the book, that that the FBI, he's FBI, so really, and Trump's uncle was supposed to have had the Tesla files. Anyway, it's about programming and a lot of other stuff that goes way out there, technology, and where you can cure an illness or create it, mind control. Now then, in my case, it had to be something else. As you have deduced a long time ago, I've spent a lot of time compartmentalized, and it may come to surprise you, but I did share a lot of information with Larry Flint last year. You may already know that. I didn't, though, and I have made approaches with data to a lot of others, some in the publishing business, some in the movie business. The frustration is I can't gauge the headway. My ear is to the ground listening for the thunder of buffaloes. I still have individuals out there who keep encouraging me to keep punching. Why? I'm going on down here now. At quiet moments, I try to make a grounded assessment of all the above. If the dastardly events above, particularly as related to the FBI's Division 5 and assorted shenanigans, were public, what would be the result? It could perhaps be very destabilizing for the nation as a whole. The Huntsville's experiments, the agony of, agony was when I was kidnapped and they took down my father. I ain't no public enemy number one. I recall being told once of an individual who jocularly referred to me once in Huntsville this way: the last thing we need here is some red-blooded all-American boy waving the flag and calling it like it is. By that, he meant telling the truth. Still, I keep trying. So from one crazy to another, thanks for caring, Jack Hartsfield.